And rolling. But what I like about the Estus flasks, I'm sorry, I keep getting slightly distracted from this topic. Is someone just shooting? Oh, they're shooting arrows from up there. I like the Estus flasks because you have a limited resource that you have to manage, and it's fairly consistent. So a lot of Dark Souls is about trying to beat a boss without using up your 5 healing items along the way, and of course not getting one shot or stun locked into death, or you know, getting consumed by lava, or knocked off a cliff, or eaten alive, or taken out by a special animation where the enemy grabs you and completely guts you. There's a lot of ways to die in Dark Souls, and Demon Souls, I am sure. But I do like the healing items. And best of all, one of my issues I have with, and it's a personal hang-up for me, so when I get a limited commodity in an RPG, or really any game, that seems oh, that was an unfortunate that was a backstab, but I fell off a ledge, so it just sort of didn't happen, but he died anyway. Interesting. Whenever I'm given it a limited commodity that has an obvious value to it, I get really stingy about using it. And I know it's a personal hang-up and not everyone has that, but I'm really bad at using healing items when I need to. It particularly shows up in games like Diablo 2, where they have multiple tiers of potions you get along the way as you're continuing through the game that are supposed to be more in line with how many hit points you're supposed to have and what the damage of the area is. And I don't use them, so I end up just selling them eventually because I have like 50 lesser healing potions and I no longer am at the proper level for them to be useful anymore. Here's a nice little thing about these games. I like about these games. These games reward you for your observation abilities. Here's an obvious line of enemies. They would be hazardous to try to take on that many at once. Here's a rack of boulders that are precariously held behind a barrier. I wonder what happens if I break the barrier. Oh, well golly gee, I guess I get a mountain of free experience. They're also really good at showing you things you're going to deal with soon. Like, they show you a dragon at the very beginning cutscene when you start this mission, and here's a dragon again. Oh look, there's a wing of another dragon. I wonder how many dragons there are. That's a potential thing to worry about. See, they remind you about the dragons because I'm about to deal with the dragons right now. So they set it up at the beginning of the mission so it's not completely out of the blue, but then they remind you again so that you aren't being blindsided by these new mechanics. But anyway, when I get a limited commodity of a useful object, I'm bad at using them because I always feel like, oh, I'm gonna need them later though. And it leads to stupid situations sometimes where I die without using my healing items. And that's just a stupid mistake. Probably don't have the same hang up in this game because there's a sense of desperation where I'm just trying not to die so I don't have to replay a whole chunk of the game again. And so I'll probably be more okay with spamming healing items because I don't want to die horribly. Because it turns out dying horribly is not a great experience. But it is a hang-up of mine, and I felt like Dark Souls was a neat little innovation compared to a lot of strategy games. I mean, RPGs. And I compare it to some extent with the Penny Arcade Episode 3 game had a nice mechanic where you have healing items and you can increase the capacity of your healing items as you continue through the game, but what happens is every single battle in that game, actually, your healing items are restored. Oh, you got back fast. Hello. I'm gonna go down here. I guess there's just something really appealing to me about the idea of having an unlimited supply. I mean, it's weird. I don't like unlimited supplies of healing items during fights, but I like unlimited supplies of healing items in a game as a whole, I guess is what I'm getting at. So I like the idea that I think there's some useful items in there. I think I'm gonna try to lure the dragon away. I guess I'm saying I welcome the challenge of resource management during fights and having to decide whether or not it's worth using them in a given moment and taking that sort of risk. But I don't like the idea of having to grind to collect healing items in some cases. And I like the sort of enforced scarcity of Estus flasks. Goodbye, buddies. You're all gonna die now. Yes, give me all your souls. Let's see if I can grab an item or two while that dragon is not being around here, hopefully. Oh, I can hear him attacking the bridge again. That should give me some extra time. I got a flame shield. What the fuck? That guy's red. Oh, I touched a bloodstain. I'm like, what did I get possessed? I mean, not possessed. Did I get invaded already? Is that what's happening? I'm not gonna go for that last item. I don't remember exactly what it is, but I don't want to get killed in one shot by that big nasty tail. Oh, hello. What are you doing here, buddy? Buddy, old pal. You're dead now is what's gonna happen. See? That's what happens. I don't even know what I mean by that's what happens. You didn't really do anything wrong. You were patrolling the road, and I removed your organs. Really, I'm in the wrong here. Except you're undead, so, you know, video games are racist against undead people. Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! This is going poorly for me. Let's just I'm just trying to get away from the dragon, guys. Give me 1 second. There we go. How much does that heal me for? Oh, full heal. Nice. So, what you just saw was probably my first huge mistake in this game. Is just wandering. I really should have had my shield raised as I ran. I was focused on running in for full speed and to conserve energy. To conserve stamina, I wasn't raising my shield. Bad mistake, because then everyone just shoots you, and they have no qualms at doing so. Oh, jeez. Made the mistake. I was locking onto enemies, and it locked on the dragon next, and I almost walked into his fire. Let's not do that. You can, if I were to guess, you can probably use ranged weapons of some kind to attack the dragon while he's stuck in this silly animation loop of attacking nothing. Because dragons are very stupid in the Dark Souls and Demon Souls continuum. And he probably gives you some kind of item if you keep attacking him. I'm not going to try that right now. This is something I like about Castlevania or Metroidvania games in general, which I do consider Demon Souls in some extent to be like, and Dark Souls especially to be like, is that they have these large maps where everything's kind of folded in on itself. So you can spend a ton of time exploring, but you don't necessarily get stuck in one linear hallway, I guess. Like if you're playing a level of Call of Duty, for example, and you have to restart the level, well then you have to replay all of that experience from scratch in the exact same way, which is unfortunate. But in Dark Souls and Demon Souls and Castlevania and so on, you unlock checkpoints throughout the experience, and you open up new passageways either because of new abilities or because you physically open levers like I just did. And that means that even if you die, you can restart the game, but you actually don't have to replay. Even though I start off at the same location again, I don't have to replay a large amount of the level. For example, that front passageway I started out in now has that massive gate unlocked right in front of it. So I can, if I die, I only have to kill a handful of soldiers, but then I can just go straight to the first boss, which just threw that spear, which is quite the difference from replaying the entire level. For example, I never have to do any climbing. I don't have to come here. I don't have to climb up walls. I don't have to deal with the accidental heal. I'm really good at doing those, by the way. So, despite the fact that people complain that the slightly roguelike nature in some ways of these games requires you to replay huge swaths of content in order whenever you die, it's not entirely true, because you do unlock new passageways and get to revisit areas. I mean, you get to where you were without having to revisit everything that was along the way. There we go. How's that feel, buddy? Did that release all your tension? Oh, release all your tension. I'm sorry. I guess the conversation brings you to the idea of how much punishment should there be for failure in a game. This is a game that expects you to be cautious and slow and pay attention to your surroundings, adapt to the idea of new enemies as you meet them, know when to defend, know when to run, so on and so forth. And it's usually really fair about it. It sets up mechanics in a really neat way, and is good at teaching you what you're doing in advance, and that's really nice. It messes up sometimes. Dark Souls and Demon Souls in particular are really bad at telling you what stats mean and how specific mechanics of the game work, but the actual fights and how enemies behave are usually given to you in a really nice, fair way. You usually only fight one of an enemy at a time the first time you see them, then they slowly pile on more of them, and then they give you slightly different scenarios in which to fight them, and it's kind of, in some ways it's kind of game design 101. This is a nice little thing. This spear here, clearly sent by a big enemy, big foreboding fog wall. This tells you, hey, this is probably the first boss fight, and it's conveniently located just down the road from the spawn location, so your first boss fight isn't super tedious of an experience if you do die against it, because you can just run back up here and start it again. But I love that it's a spear, a giant spear, because it makes you think, oh, this is some kind of giant. I'm gonna fight a giant. What is this? That's terrifying. And then when you see it, it kind of subverts all of your expectations of what a boss fight is, because it's just the enemy you just fought, except there's like 50 of them in a stack, and they're creating what is called a Phalanx, which is I think it's named after either Greek or Roman tactics, where or even Spartan maybe, where people would gather up with their shields, and they would all be back to back, but they'd create this essentially a turtle shell out of the little projectiles coming at me that I'm not doing so great at keeping out of the way of. Trying to circle around them because I want to get behind them to their gooey, delicious, weak backsides and punish them for not being very fast opponents. But they'd create like a turtle shell of shields, and this was used in historical battles. This is a real thing, not just a made-up fantasy concept, where people would, they create this turtle shell of shields, and they would use that to break through enemy defenses, because they could get through primarily projectiles. Like when people are shooting, when there's an array of archers defending a wall, it's easier to get past them if you can completely defend from all sides against their projectiles, which is what's happening here. The Phalanx itself, the boss that is called Phalanx and takes damage when you hit him, is essentially this mound of poo in the middle that's glowing. As far as I'm aware, he can't hurt you or really do anything besides move around, but he's covered in these guys, and they can physically mount themselves on him and stab at you with their spears, but they come off piece by piece in their attempts to fight you off. They're being especially clumpy and slow today. This longsword I picked up from the vendor, very useful for this fight in conjunction with the stats of my character for just wiping these guys out in one power attack. It's really nice. I just have to circle around behind them, which is easy because they're super slow, and stabby. But I just love that it's almost as if, like, it's hard to say because I don't know if they expected their reputation of being a super hard game, because Demon's Souls was immediately had a huge reputation for being this incredibly difficult game on the PS3. But it feels almost as if they knew that was going to happen, and they thought, oh, well, clearly the big first boss fight is going to be expected to be some sort of indomitable force, this terrifying, fearsome creature. So it's like they wanted to mess with your expectations by throwing this at you, this lump of enemies. It's just not like I've seen boss fights before that are just the same enemy you fought earlier but bigger, or a bunch of them together in some way. Like, that's not an entirely novel concept, but it is interesting that the actual boss is essentially a non-combatant. It's just a thing that sits there. And it's certainly not what I think most people expected when they were going into this game, especially since nothing resembles this up to this point, aside from having encounters with these small things that make up its body. I think I've got an entire undefended side to abuse right here, so I'm going to take care of that. Oh, oh. There's a few more guys over here than I was expecting. I thought I had a full side uncovered with no enemies. There we go. Now I can just punish him for not being covered properly. I don't think any of them are even going to attack me right now. Okay, they're starting to circle around. Gotta pay a little attention. I've switched to two-handed stance. You do that by hitting triangle. You have to be really careful about when you do these things, because I'm not using my shield anymore, which really messes with my own ability to attack. I mean, not attack, to defend myself, which can be a problem. At this point, I might as well just wipe them all out. They're just sort of sitting here. Did switching to two-hand make me do less damage? No, it didn't. Weird. I felt like I was doing less damage because I hit that guy and he didn't die instantly. Maybe he just had slightly different. I don't know. He could have had different hit points. When you switch to two-handed weapons, two-handed stance, it's a gamble. You are more vulnerable to attack now. Here we go. First boss defeated with no deaths. That's it's not exactly an impressive accomplishment, but I'm not unhappy. You're more vulnerable when you switch to two-handed. So because here I can use shields when I'm using one-handed, but my attacks are weaker, but a bit faster, I think. Two-handed weapons, you block with your sword, which has lower damage reduction. I think this sword has 50%, and so you can do these nice, powerful swings that can really punish the weak side of a boss and make the boss fight shorter, and as a result, increase your chances of survival by not having you get wailed on in the long run. But it's problematic if you want to, say, ever defend yourself from an attack. So now I've made the first archstone, and I can head back to town. I skipped the town. I skipped the very little bit at the beginning of the game because I just wanted to get into the meat of things with this Let's Play. So I skipped the part where you have to watch a lady monologue and there's an intro cutscene. You're welcome to look those up if you want, but there's even though there's a surprising amount of depth and detail to some of the story in this game, it's kind of tedious to sit through.
The monumental awaits the above. The monumental will explain the nexus to thee.
Gotta say, the dramatic rise looks a little out of place when I just finished, when I had just finished watching her talk to me. Oh, I'm on the wrong ramp, my bad. I have to walk way up to the top of this area. The first time I played this game, and I didn't make it super far. It was back in 2009. I beat the first two bosses. Loved the game, never came back to it for some reason. I don't really know why. I think it's because it's just an intimidating experience, but it should be less intimidating now that I've beaten Dark Souls and have some level of skill with this series, or spiritual series, or whatever you want to call it. It took me a very long time to find where the monumental was so that I could figure out how to progress, essentially. But the intro cutscene basically just tells you, the land of Boletaria is under attack by darkness. It's a fog of evil. You're here to kill the fog of evil. But when you first start the mission, if you play the tutorial, you die in your attempts to vanquish the fog. You encounter one boss and he basically one-shots you. And then here you are. You're in the soul land. Not the nexus, I mean. You have half health until you come back to life by killing a boss, and everything sucks because everyone's dead. Look at all these. Look at the monumentals. See, there's a mountain of monumentals here, and she said the monumental because this is the only one left.
We have long awaited you, Slayer of Demons. I am one of the monumentals. We preserve the fabric of reality. There is something thou needest to know. Once, we too, a scourge of demons faced. In the distant past, under a benevolent rule, the world was united, owing to the soul arts. Until A lust for power caused the awakening of the Old One. Across the land seeped a colorless, deep fog, and the world faced extinction at the hands of the demons. Thanks be, we were able to lull the Old One back to his slumber, yet only after the loss of innumerable souls, and half the world lost, erased by the fog. In order to mend the fabric of what land still remained, we entrusted 6 elders with 6 precious archstones. 1 to the king of a small yet diligent land. 1 to the king of the burrowers underground. 1 to the wise queen of the great ivory tower. 1 to the chieftain of lost and ill-fortuned souls. 1 to the shaman of the tempest-worshipping shadowmen. And the last to the great giants of the northern lands. The archstones were placed at nodes across the earth. We contained the Old One inside this nexus and banned the soul arts. Finally, we became monumentals, half-living sentinels of the fabric of reality. Alas, the other monumentals have perished, and only I remain.
By the power of the monumentals, the 4 sealed archstones have been released.
Now it is your turn. You must lull the Old One back to its slumber, and seal it away for all eternity. If not, the deep fog will absorb all that we know. Have you the strength to accept this mission?
I wonder what happens if you say no.
Yes.
The game just
We are
ends.
fortunate indeed to have you. Now, go forth and destroy every last demon. The Old One, without demons to feed its souls, will a new servant seek and lure you to its bosom.